Luke 2, verses 2 to 10. Now, like infants at the breast, drink deep of God's pure kindness. Then you'll grow up mature and whole in God. You've had a taste of God. Welcome to the living stone, the source of life. The workman took one look and threw out. God set it in the place of honor. Present yourselves as building stones for the construction of a sanctuary, vibrant with life, in which you'll serve as holy priests, offering Christ-approved lives up to God. The scriptures provide precedent. Look, I'm setting a stone in Zion, a cornerstone in the place of honor. Whoever trusts in this stone as a foundation will never have cause to regret it. To you who trust in him, he's a stone to be proud of. But to those who refuse to trust him, the stone the workman threw out is now the chief foundation stone. For the untrusting, it's a stone to trip over, a boulder blocking the way. They trip and fall because they refuse to obey, just as predicted. But you are the ones chosen by God, chosen for the high calling of priestly work, chosen to be a holy people, God's instruments to do his work and speak out for him, to tell others of the night and day difference he made for you, from nothing to something, from rejected to accepted.
Well, I am looking also for some help. I'm looking for someone who may be able to give a few hours here and there to be an administrative assistant. I've been snowed under for I don't know how long with a bunch of things that I have no business doing. And they're administrative duties, insurance, with CRA, that's always pleasant, and other things that we are dealing with here and there. So if you are someone with a skill set in that area, you might be available to work on some projects from time to time, I would appreciate that very much. Speaking of insurance, we were required some time ago by our insurance company to carry out some inspections and other things on the building. There were 7 of them. And although there's someone who was running with that early on, they weren't able to continue, so it fell in my lap. So I spent all kinds of time working with our insurance broker, insurer company, inspectors of one sort or another, who have crawled all over this building with me. And that is not my job. So the inspections have all been done. There's 6 of them done, 1 more to go, and it has to be in this week, and I'm still waiting on it. Still waiting on this final. It's a structural inspection of the building. It's been done. I just don't have the report in my little hand. And if I don't have it in my hand by the end of next week, we may have to close the doors because they will not renew our insurance. So I'll pray that I get that tomorrow, and then we'll be on the road again. But anyway, so we had this engineer's report looking at our foundation because the insurance company was concerned that after 30-odd years of C-train traffic outside our walls, that perhaps the vibrations from the trains have actually caused problems with our structural integrity, mostly the foundation. And so at the same time we were involved in all of this, Brookfield began building its Brookfield place across the road. I mentioned to you once that an engineer came over from there and put little reflectors on our tower, and that those reflectors are monitored by lasers 24/7. Any little shift in the tower will cause a halt to the work. And so, but nothing's moved. Nothing's moved. So I think our foundation is good. Now, if we thought we might have potential problems with our foundation, think of the Abbey Church of St. Peter and St. Paul in Bath, England. I just read about this recently. They're having problems with troublesome church members. Not the current ones, those of centuries past. Let me explain. It's not the people in the pews that are bothering people, it's the dead bodies in the basement that are causing concern. Threatening to destroy the church in a literal way, actually bring it down. Now, Abbey Church is an Anglican parish. I have it up there somewhere, I think. There's a slide of that somewhere. There it is. Beautiful. Beautiful building. You could just leave that for a second. Gothic cathedral built on the remains of a Norman cathedral that predated it. This site was founded in the 7th century as a monastery. And the problem is this: over the centuries, 6,000 people have been buried below the stone floor. Makes you wonder what's around here. I've heard noises, I don't know. But over time, of course, those bodies decay and they become just bones, and when they decay, they compress. And when they compress, they create air spaces all over the place. And the graves settle, the holes have opened up beneath the floor, and it's threatening the whole stability of the building, the foundation. The floors could collapse at any time. So they're now undergoing an extensive reconstruction project to stabilize the entire edifice. Well, this certainly isn't the first or last time members have threatened the stability of the church. Today, it's not membership that's the problem in the church, it's the lack of membership in the church. That is a growing issue and concern for most churches. We're shrinking, we're declining in membership and attendance everywhere. Everywhere. It's a phenomenon of our age that we've never had to deal with in our time. The Observer, amazing Observer, had several articles and an editorial on this current problem for the United Church of Canada. We are closing congregations at the rate of more than one a week, 52 weeks a year. One a week. Also, did you know that between 2001 and 2011, our membership shrunk by 30% in a decade? Bad news. Reality strikes. Like Abbey Church, we're being severely shaken and we may be facing a major collapse as a denomination. But the church has always faced challenges, friends, from within and from the changing and often hostile culture surrounding it. Consider these younger congregations that Peter is addressing in today's text. He's writing a letter to new converts, new believers, who have begun to follow Jesus. They are being persecuted. They're struggling to establish a sense of their identity and bring about order and unity. And so Peter uses that opening image of a newborn baby, because that's how he thinks of these dear ones. In need of mother's milk, mother's nurturing. These people need that. It portrays a picture of innocence and purity alongside vulnerability and total dependence on another for nurture, protection, survival, and growth, so that the faith of these new Christians will be continually nourished by others, lest it die in the midst of the difficult and threatening circumstances they face. Peter writes as a spiritual father. He's affirming, he's encouraging, he's exhorting them. He says, you've got everything you need. You have everything you need to stand firm. He compares them to a sanctuary, to a worshipful building that's being put together. They have the spiritual milk of God's Word to nurture them. They're built on a living cornerstone, a foundation of Jesus Christ. They have one another as they're joined and fitted together in community. Living stones built, fortified on, and unified in Jesus Christ. The key to rock bottom living. Okay, we can move that slide back, I think. Oh, not yet. Early. If you go back to the main one. That's good. Now, living stones, that's a pretty strange, weird kind of metaphor, isn't it? We know what stones are, but we don't think of stones as being alive. I mean, one thing is non-organic and one is organic, and Peter puts them together. That's kind of a paradox. That's kind of what our faith's all about. It's all a paradox. So it shouldn't bother us too much that he uses that one. Besides, Christians are weird, so there you go. It's just the way we are. It says we're a peculiar people in the Bible, right, Wayne? We are. We are. You know, it was almost 10 years ago, we celebrated our centenary. Can you believe that? As a congregation. We had an anniversary service in February, close to the date when this church was dedicated. I preached on the same text, the passage from 1 Peter 2 that day. So I want to revive a few of those points I shared with you then. You won't remember them anyway. I barely remember next week what I did this week. Somebody asked me. Because the same challenges face us in the 21st century as faced the first century church. And I want to talk about what it means to live as living stones for God in our time. Living stones. Now, the image of stones in the Bible is frequent metaphor used. Diane reminded us this when she returned from Israel. And she stood up here and she shared some of her beautiful slides. And she said one of the things that struck her as a feature in that part of the world were the stones. There were so many stones of all sizes and types all over the place. And that's why I guess the metaphor is used by Bible writers of stones, right? The ancient Jews, Diane also reminded us, would often set up pillars of stones, a memorial or monument of stones to remind the people of some particular encounter with God or some experience of God's providential care. But stones are also used metaphorically to describe living beings, right? Not just inorganic matter. God is our rock, right? The stone from which we are hewn, the prophet says. Jesus is a cornerstone. Jesus said he was the temple of God. He was the temple of God. Destroy this temple, he meant his body. They didn't get that. And I will raise it up in 3 days. A new temple, not built with hands, he says. Jesus himself. And he talked about building our lives on his teaching. And that's like building a house on a rock. It will not be moved. Lots of references. Peter was Simon before Jesus renamed him Petros, which means rock, upon which he would build his church, a community of his followers, right? Living stones, a strange and innovative combination of concepts. Solid, but changing, reliable, but growing. Interesting. Well, first of all, I want to share with you this, friends. To be living stones means to be connected to a cornerstone. That's how it works in buildings. You have to have a cornerstone. Our anniversary celebration, the Lahids, we're here. Now you can show that one now, please. Of the Lahids. There we go. There we are. With Peter and Don Lahid, myself, as we opened the time capsule. It wasn't in the cornerstone, it was behind the cornerstone. Cornerstones are just ceremonial today. And the name there, the date, I just reminded myself there that I think May 4th was our 110th dedication of that stone. 110 years. Well, anyway, we opened the time capsule and then we repacked it with things from today for another 100 years. It's kind of exciting. As I say, they're symbolic, they're ceremonial, in name only. They're not structurally significant. But in previous eras, cornerstones gave alignment to the entire building. Where you set that thing was absolutely crucial. It was the first stone that set in place. It was essential that it was properly set. It was immovable. The building got its strength and its resilience from that cornerstone, so that all the stones would be strengthened and the edifice as a whole would be strong. Peter's addressing those who seem as nothing in the larger culture. They've lost their status by their newfound faith. But he says, welcome to the living cornerstone, the source of life. Welcome to the cornerstone. Jesus is our cornerstone. He's the one from whom we draw new life. My cornerstone here is, I bring it up once in a while to show you. It sits in my garden at home. But when we were working on the exterior of the church building, redoing it with new sandstone, I got to know the stonemason, George. And we spent a lot of time out there with George. And I would watch him work by hand. All those stones laid by hand, perfectly cut, placed, beautiful. And over in the corner were all the castaways. The bits that chipped off and whatever, or just weren't suitable for the work. And one of those was standing over in the edge, and I said to George, would you make a little cornerstone for me? And out of that stuff over there. He said, I can make you one out of this good stuff. I said, I don't want the good stuff, I want that one over there. And he said, all right. So he did. He carved this out for me and presented it to me. He said, why did you do that? I said, because our faith teaches us that the one who is our cornerstone was rejected by mankind. Expendable, no value, no purpose. In fact, he was an enemy of the state. They got rid of him. And Jesus said, or God, the word says, God took him, made him the chief cornerstone. That's how God works. And I need to be reminded of that in our own lives. We need to be reminded of that. That we're the ones who feel rejected, broken, no value, chipped, and flawed in life. And God says, that's the one I want. That's the one I want. For something very, 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 very special. From nothing to something, it says in Peter. From rejected to accepted, that's who we are because of Jesus Christ. So we must be fit with him. We have a special purpose, a place in the living sanctuary that he is building with each of us. We all have a place because we're all flawed, right? Fragile, cracked somewhere, broken somewhere, chipped in life. That's, he says, you're the one I have a special place for, special purpose. He holds us together. We're facing a crisis. Our former moderator, Peter Short, a friend of mine and classmate of mine, he said many years ago, he said this, when I ask church leaders about their vitality and what makes for a vital ministry, they don't talk about Jesus. Hardly any ministers talk about Jesus. Implication is that we can't be the church. We're unconnected and uncommitted to him. We can't be it. We're just a bunch of loose stones trying to get along. Yeah? That's how it works. Spiritual word, we have the spiritual milk of his word as well, Peter says. We have his teachings. And then everybody can understand the teachings of Jesus, the sayings of Jesus. We don't need anything else. Tony Campolo many years ago wrote a book called Red Letter Christians. He started a campaign, he started an organization called Red Letter Christians. He gave me a wristband at the time, but it keeps falling off my hand, so I have to wear it. It's a big wrist, I guess. But Red Letter Christians, you know those certain Bibles, they have the words of Jesus in red letters? Well, Tony says that's all we need to worry about. It's those things. And do those things, and that's what we're all about, committed to living out the things Jesus said. Well, living stones are connected to the cornerstone, and secondly, they find their fit in the family of faith. Say that 5 times quicker. Find their fit in the family of faith. That's what you do if you're a living stone. It says, present yourself as living stones for the construction of a sanctuary vibrant with life. Isn't that great? Vibrant with life. It doesn't say, present yourself as a living stone, because you cannot build a temple or a sanctuary with a stone. Impossible. You go outside and walk around this building once and count all those huge sandstone blocks there. There are thousands of them. Or we wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't be sitting here at all. It's the combined strength and close connectedness of each stone that makes this building strong. What holds it together, what allows it to grow and bear fruit is the combined strength, close connectedness of all of us as living stones. Not just a random collection of disconnected people. I don't want that. That's not it. Those fitted together in proper, supportive, edifying relationship with all the other living stones to form a glorious spiritual house. You know, in Capernaum, there's a 3rd century synagogue, and next door to it is a small house, spiritual house, small house built of small stones, no mortar. They call them living stones. Why do they call them living stones? Because every one of those stones in that building was lovingly rubbed together with other stone, with another stone, until they just fit perfectly. Right? Fit perfectly. No two the same. But together the building is beautiful. And so it is for us. So it is for us. As we rub up against each other, as we experience the warmth of God's love pass between us, we discover what real community is all about. And we're able to grow, and we're able to change and become stronger together than we ever could be apart. I've been meeting with a couple of members for a while, every month, for breakfast, and I love this. They approached me. Gotta love that. They said, we have an idea. We'd like to talk to you about it. There's something we'd like to do. And I said, I'll be there. I'll be there. So we've been meeting. And one their thing is this, their purpose is this. As they came into this church as new people, they wanted to know where to get connected and how to do that. And they said, we'd like to help other people do that, to find their fit here. So find a place, find a connection somewhere. Find a place to make a contribution, because every human being wants to do that. Something they're passionate, these guys are passionate about that. And they want others to share in it. So if you're interested in something like that, that could be another area to volunteer for. That will keep you informed. We're going to try to work on that and how we can do that better. That's exciting, because that's my passion, is to connect people. Connect people. In Ephesians 4, the writer says this. It says, it's as we find our fit with others that we become equipped for ministry. The fitting is the equipping. Okay? We won't know where we should be equipped to serve until we're connected with some other Christians here. And as we do that, we begin to see possibilities for serving. That's right. We need that to grow. I read this week. It said this: the reason mountain climbers are tied together is to keep the sane ones from going home. Well, there's one again. Isn't that great? I think he's right. Keep the sane ones from going home. You know, on days when our heart tells us that we should give up, and our rational mind says we should believe in things that make a lot more sense. That's when we feel the tug at the rope. Someone else is on the journey with us. Right? I remember the story of a pastor who was visiting a member and hadn't been in church for a long time, and nobody could get in touch with him. And he said, what's the problem? And the guy said, I suppose I'm just having a crisis in faith. And the pastor says, well, come to church with the rest of us that are having a crisis in faith. What's the matter? It's okay. That's why we come. I love Lauren Winters. She's a professor of theology at Duke University Seminary. She wrote a great book called Still, Notes on a Mid-Faith Crisis. It is a rich, beautiful book of little readings. And she talks about going to church once in a strange town. Didn't want to really go to church, but she heard her mother's voice in her head, so, that was that. And she went to church and sat at the back on the end of the pews. Anybody like to sit on the end of the pews? Sat at the end of the pew, wanted to be alone. And she said, I used to go to church not to be alone, but now, at this stage, I want to be alone. Just be alone. I want to sit on the edge so that I can speak up. Well, a moment later, she feels someone standing beside her, a woman looking down and well-dressed. Obviously, she's sitting in her place. So, reluctantly, she scoots over a bit, and the lady sits down. Well, that's okay. One lady, there's enough distance between them, but wouldn't you know it, the place begins to fill up with all kinds of strange characters. I mean, there's guys with, purple hair, and there's bag ladies, and don't they want to sit in her pew? So they start coming to pass by her, and they're sitting beside her. Now she's crammed in. And she's very, very uneasy about it. And then finally a lady comes in and looks very nervous and disheveled, and she scoots by her and she forces her way right beside Lauren. And this woman, immediately her leg starts going. She starts tapping her knee, and it just is incessant, and it goes through the service. And there's some point in the sermon where Lauren said, I couldn't believe I did this. I just reached over and I just put my hand on her hand and pressed it down. Hard. And I thought, what am I doing? And then she waited, and the tapping stopped. And the woman took her hand. And they held hands for the rest of the service. Connection. Most unlikely people and places. That's what we're defining here. AA gets it right, and we were talking about this in our little breakfast meeting. AA understands. We said, what's the difference? Some of the difference between evening congregation, morning congregation. It's very obvious to us, anyway. Because people need one another. They need one another to live, to survive, to remain sober, to be restored to sanity. They can't do it on their own. That's the key. That's what. Right? It's their family. It's a matter of survival. We need to have that same understanding for ourselves, friends. In Christ, we need that. These people go, they get a sponsor, one-on-one buddy, they go to meetings. They go to a lot of meetings in the first while. That's important. It's not an option if they're to heal and grow, right? It isn't for us either, friends. Find a buddy. get into community, small groups, go to meetings with one another. We learn this, like infants, we don't get spiritual milk from ourselves. We have to have mothers around. Oh yeah, finally. It's final. Okay, living stones. Those that are having rock bottom lives, we need to cultivate our calling. Cultivate our calling.